Hey, it's David, and thanks for listening. Now, I haven't sent my heartfelt thanks in a long time to our hometown audience who listen to Waxy 107.9, 1370 AM, and Real Radio 101.7. Thanks so much for your continuous support. And of course, for all the podcast listeners out there, as always, a big thank you. So, I've been thinking about the latest conversations we've been having at the dinner table, and as usual, it begins with the ailments each of us has and what we're suffering from, and then it moves on to drugs that are keeping them in check, and of course, the cost of the drugs. But the conversation that really interested me is when someone started talking about a more holistic approach to their problems, which, quite frankly, I always thought that the category of holistic medicine was all about my vitamins, but there's so much more, as I've learned. There's herbs and roots and exercise and mind over matter, all of which play a part in what we call the holistic approach. So I've invited Christine Lang to join us, also known as the Body Whisperer, who will tell us everything from how to listen to our body, what's toxic, what's positive energy, and how it leads to exceptional self-care. So that's what we'll yak about today. What's up, everybody? David Yakir here for Yak About Today, hoping you are better, healthier, and more informed than any generation that came before. So if the years 46 to 64 mean something to you, then this is the place you want to be. Now put your headphones on, go for a run, and listen to what we yak about today. All right. Thanks for listening. I'm David Yakir, and you are listening to Yak About Today. And I do have Christine Lang here, and I'm so glad she's been able to join us. She is on my wall on video right now, and we're going to have a long talk about, I think it's holistic type of approaches, if I'm right. Anyway, welcome, yes. Christine.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Anyway, so I think, when I read about you and I read all the things you put out there, it seems that you really believe there are so many different elements that it seems that we have a capability of taking care of ourselves beyond drugs or understanding an illness and being able to, I keep using mind over matter type of thing because I do believe our brain does control something. So absolutely. Why don't you do this? I know you have such an interesting background. You started off as a lawyer, and then all of a sudden you went into sort of this, and you used a really interesting word. It's all these different kinds of alternative medicines, and tell us how you started, something about an allergy. So
when I was in law school, I developed allergies, and I never had these abilities before growing up. I was a typical American kid. I'm a recovering Catholic, so I didn't really have any sort of spirituality that meant anything to me. And in my second year of law school, developed allergies, not asthma, but upper respiratory. And it was before the days of the meds we have now that don't cause drowsiness. So my options were, take 2 Benadryl and then drink Diet Coke all day to stay awake in my law school classes, or walk around with a box of tissues. And both those options were miserable. And so when I got out of law school, I just said, I'm fixing this. I just decided to dive into studying what was then called alternative medicine, and really spent about 4 years studying everything from Chinese herbs and supplements and acupuncture and, anything I could get my hands on, and tried to meditate, was terrible at it, couldn't do it, and couldn't turn off my lawyer brain. And so I started studying yoga and Tai Chi just to kind of do a moving meditation and slow down a little bit. And I made the link between higher stress, worse allergies. I'm like, okay, that'll lower my stress. And so I started kind of inching towards that way of thinking in the holistic model. And then a Tai Chi instructor suggested that I go learn how to channel healing energy and get a Reiki attunement. And I did that, and I didn't really know what to do with it. But before I offered a friend an energy treatment, I would say, let me go sit down and meditate. And I would take off my lawyer clothes and sit and meditate just to change channels in my brain. And I started noticing that when I did that, I knew some things about this friend and her physical body that I shouldn't know. I didn't have any logical way of knowing it. And I would share these little snippets that I would, hey, by the way, are you allergic to this? Or did you have a fight with your husband last night about buying a new car? And they would say, yes, that's right. How do you know this? And I didn't know how I knew. And then I would give them an energy treatment and it would be really powerful and they would be healed. And so the third time it happened, my friend said, who are you talking to when you're hearing these little bits of information? I said, I don't know. And I went back upstairs and sat down in my meditation chair. And I said, who am I talking to? And my spirit said, welcome home. And tears went down my face. And she said, this is who you came here to be. In other words, I don't care that you just dropped $100,000 in law school. This is who you came here to be. And, get ready. And I would sit in meditation for 3 or 4 hours a day and just kind of get this information download of this is what it feels like when somebody's taking blood pressure medication. This is what a gallbladder looks like when it's getting toxic. And she just started showing me things that I was starting to pick up on people. And that was 20 years ago. And I started seeing clients, and compared to, practicing law and being aggressive and argumentative and kind of focusing in negative energy, doing this kind of work was so powerful and positive. It was easy to kind of make that shift, even though it seemed unlikely. And I've been working with people ever since, helping them understand how we all internalize stress differently. So a boss can walk into an office and start yelling, and this woman gets a headache, this guy gets a stomach ache, and this person feels his low back go out because they each internalized that stressor differently. And so helping people understand how they internalize stress is really powerful.
So I have a question. It's almost like there's a language there. You talk often about understanding or listening to your symptoms or getting messages from your symptoms. So it sounds like when I read about it, when I read what you've written, it sounds like it's almost like learning French or learning Spanish or something like that. And you've deciphered a language that tells you something from the symptoms you get. So this is a two-part question. One is that you yourself probably have an understanding of your physical being at this point, 20 years in. So when something's happening, you have trained yourself to really understand what that thing is and what it's telling you. How do you translate that to somebody like me who really needs it urgently, by the way? And we'll get to that in a little while too, probably after the break. But how do you translate that to somebody walks in, and how will you? They walk in with a backache, they walk in with some congestion or something like that, and you say what?
Well, to your earlier point of like the mind over matter piece, I don't know that it's mind over matter, but it's certainly mind blended with matter, in that there in any chronic symptom, there is a physiology component and there's an emotional component. Now that, something like IBS, the emotional component is huge, right? Because anything that your doctor will say, stress will make your condition worse. How I hear that is the emotional piece is big, and it's the predominant causation factor of the physiology. Now, if you fall off a curb and break your ankle, that's got almost nothing emotional in it. Maybe you were distracted and that piece is emotional, but it's mostly physiology. So it's separating out how much of this needs to have an emotional component of understood and healed, as well as the physiology. And I think it can't just be all spiritual, airy fairy stuff, right? It has to be grounded in real life practical application for you. So when somebody comes in and presents with a certain chronic symptom, I always say, your spirit is using your body like a giant answering machine. It's like a big message board. And certain parts of the body correspond to certain subjects. So, for instance, low back pain is almost always related to feeling disempowered. Now, you might feel disempowered about money, or you might feel disempowered about, your relationship you have with your brother or whatever, but it's about disempowerment. So there's certain topics that kind of, when we internalize stress and negative stuff in a certain part of the body, that lets us get an idea of the topic we're probably going to be focusing on. Then beyond that, we go into the specifics of asking that person's, I can hear that person's spirit say, here's the particular power struggle that's registering in his lower back.
All right. I have a big question coming up, and
Okay.
and I'll just give you the preview of it now before we
Okay.
talk about our sponsor. And you talk a lot about energy,
Hmm.
right? And I want to talk about that sort of when we come back from our
Okay.
sponsor. All right. I want to take a moment to talk to you about New Vision Eye Center. For the last couple of years, they've been a sponsor of this show, and I couldn't be prouder. I've met so many people that have walked up to me and thanked me for recommending them. I hear all sorts of stories about how they've worked miracles. And as you know, I've been a patient of New Vision Eye Center for years. So when I say go see Dr. Minotti, Reinauer, Tate, and O'Brien, it's because I wouldn't trust my eyes to anyone else. All right, and we are back. I'm here with Christine Lang, and she is known as the Body Whisperer, which I think is my favorite title of any guest I've ever had on here. It's sort of one of those titles that makes you sort of believe that let me see if I can do this the other way. It's sort of like you see somebody and they talk from another dimension and you're not sure. It's not that they're wrong and they're right, but how you enter that dimension that they're talking about, that's often complicated. So I think I said we were going to talk about energy first, but I think I have a question before that.
Okay.
And that is, it always reminds me of hypnosis. If you fight it, you never know what it is, but if you let yourself go, and that took me years and years until somebody it absolutely worked. I mean, it worked,
Yeah.
and that's because I bought into it, right?
Right.
So when you see people, do they come to you ready because they need another?
Yeah, I am frequently people's last resort, and I'm okay with that because I always say, back when I was a lawyer, I wouldn't have come to see me. I would not have been my first choice because I'm out there. But when people have tried all kinds of things, or Western medicine has said, here are your options, and the side effects are awful, then it's reasonable to try this and see, okay, what are my other options, and how much is the healing that could happen here going to actually change my life? Just like with hypnosis, you say you have to buy in. I think if you're open to it, you get the biggest result. But I have people who are non-believers come in all the time, and it doesn't intimidate me at all. I get corporate CEOs and executives, and they come in kind of scoffing, and then their spirit will say, well, it's like when you were 7 and your uncle made fun of your mom, and they go, oh my God, right? and it's easy to kind of get people to believe once a little tidbit is thrown out, or something that their spirit says to me that really resonates. And I always say, what happens to people who don't believe in gravity? They stick to the earth anyway. I mean, I don't care if you believe or don't believe, because for 20 years I've been doing this and people get better. It's established for me, and I'm really comfortable letting people find their own way into the water, however they want to do it.
I keep putting off the question I said we were going to ask. So now it's sort of, I feel like I'm about to ask you for a service that I'm not actually paying for, but I'll ask.
No worries, go for it.
I'll
Tell
ask
people get an experience of it.
So as you you are aware when you look at a person or listen to a person, because this is the nature of what you do. So
Right.
you're probably aware of the person that you're listening to right now. And you're probably aware that there's something strange about the voice, or it could be nasal, or I have a cold, or I could be sick, that type of thing. And the reason I'm asking is, and again, I'm sorry to have to do this to you, but
No, it's fine.
the reason I'm asking is, so about a year ago, for people who listen to my show on a regular basis, they've been telling me little by little my voice has been changing. It's been getting more nasal, more nasal, more nasal. And as a result, I did what you always do. not come to you first, but coming to you after I did go
Yes.
to all the doctors.
All who went to doctors, that's fine.
And, they took x-rays, and yes, I had sort of a nasal sinus infection, but I took the antibiotics for that, and supposedly it went away. And then I was told, based on these x-rays, that I had a deviated septum, and as I've gotten older, it's closed off even more, and that could have all happened recently. So I think the question I'm asking is probably there's a combination of medicine, and also what you do. Mm-hmm. And I think there's two questions here. One, do you find that you are often working in conjunction with traditional medicines, right? Because I think my situation may be partially helped by whatever the surgery is, although I am going for a second opinion, or actually a third, since you're going to be my second opinion.
Okay.
All right. So tell me something I should know.
Let me break down all those questions. So the first one I would say, the first answer I can give you is yes. I frequently work in tandem with doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, acupuncturists, and we kind of trade information back and forth as the client or patient is comfortable. And because, like I said, a lot of times there's a physiology component and then there's an emotional component. So to the functional medicine doctors that are open to working with, we get beautiful results. When I look at you, first of all, I don't see you as being sick, because I can usually see a virus or bacteria in a person's body. You don't have any right now. And when I look at your face, you appear to have the inflammation throughout your nose and nasal cavity and sinuses that is consistent with either allergies or polyps. And so then when I just kind of take a moment and pause and listen to your spirit, he tells me it actually started a year and 3 months ago, to be specific. And he said there was a conversation, feels like with another adult male. I don't see who it is, but it was a conversation that kind of set you back on your heels a bit and got you questioning yourself. And he says it triggered in you some doubts you had about yourself from childhood. And in your childhood, you had allergies. So it sort of re-inflamed your allergies. They now show up differently. And this is where the Western doctor's speech comes in, because as you've aged, the deviated septum's gotten slightly worse because the cartilage has gotten a little weaker. Therefore, a little bit of inflammation in allergies wouldn't have impacted your breathing in quite the same way as a child, but it's impacting it more now.
So
does all that resonate?
Yeah, it does. So you're saying that, okay, so let me interpret what I think
read that in for a second.
What I'm hearing. So something could have set off a condition, a physical condition that I've had, right? Which, again, I'm going to try to articulate this. Maybe I wouldn't have been pushed into the severity of the condition hadn't something happened.
The triggering event hadn't happened.
The event, which whatever happens to your body when you stress out over it, or didn't act kindly with whatever physically was wrong, like a deviated septum or something like that. Okay, so having said that, right, is the natural if I don't know what town are you in now?
I'm outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, so I'm down in Florida. So let's say we were in the same town. Right now, I'd probably come sit down and be a patient, or whatever you call it, I guess a patient.
Well, I have clients all over the world because I do Zoom sessions.
Just that's right. Of course.
All the time.
We're doing it now.
You don't even have to come. Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is that in what order? So I'm going for a second medical opinion to see if what they physically found was the problem.
Matches up. Sure.
But would I come to you first and so you could calm down or teach me how to recognize, how to control that? What I would say is,
come see me before you do the surgery, and let's see what kind of, if you handle the emotional aspect of it. Right. So more specifically, that conversation made you question yourself, and it feels like it triggered fears that came up for you when you were between 6 and 7. And I feel like it was your dad at that time or a strong male authority figure that questioned you and basically said, and I'm just paraphrasing, some version of, well, I don't know how successful you're going to be in life as a real man because of blah, blah, blah. And that same self-doubt got re-triggered. So I feel like you had some sort of allergies or something as a kid that was a self-rejection that came from that conversation and that belief system of your father. And whatever conversation you had a year and 3 months ago re-triggered that. And this is like the current version of your allergies. Does that resonate?
It does. It does in slightly different background, but I don't have time for that. We've got about a minute and a quarter now. I just want to talk about, and maybe we can continue this conversation at another time, right? You talk about energy, and a lot of people talk about energy, and I don't know if you can do this in exactly a minute, that type of thing, before the music starts coming up and all that. But the idea that, and it makes sense, you talk about how in a relationship, someone else's energy affects your energy. That all makes total sense. I mean, even if you don't speak the language you speak, I know that in my relationship, that if the energy is coming out wrong there, my energy just goes flip-flop and all over the place, right? But you seem to have, and again, I know we're going to do a part 2 to this. It's just a matter of a couple of weeks. I just would love to understand, right? Is it as simple of putting yourself in a certain place not to react to that energy, or defend yourself against the energy? And we got like 30 seconds, or actually, go ahead.
So I would say, let me think of the most concise way to say this. I would say every living being takes in and discharges energy. So there's always energy moving through you. Your thoughts and feelings control the vibrational frequency of that energy. So when you're thinking a negative thought, you get kind of staticky in your energy. And when you're thinking a happy thought, it clears it up a bit.
Hey, Christine, before I forget, I need you to do something. I need you to tell everybody how they get in touch with you, what they should be reading, what the websites are, what the phone numbers are, everything that you have, because I want people to really get in touch with you. I think it would be a great idea for a lot of people.
Okay, great. My website is christinelang.org, O-R-G. So christinelang.org. And on there I have free tools for people under a little page called Life Tools. I've got guided meditations and little classes. And then I also have an online class you can take to help you start hearing the messages from your spirit for yourself. So all that's available. You can email me from the website.
All right. And remember, everybody, that's Christine at christinelang.org. That's Christine at christinelang.org. And thank you so much. Thank you. And
it's my pleasure.
And we'll see you next time you're on this show.
Okay. I'll be back.
Your mother simply knows the goods. Tell all your hula friends outside. You ain't got time to take a ride. Don't talk back.